Ustedes son unos insolentes, hijos majaderos. Ustedes no saben lo que está pasando aquí. So, you probably don't like me now since I just screamed at you blatantly, but that's how the president of my country addresses his public. And I think it's my duty as a citizen of Ecuador to represent myself by the person who we elected to represent the country. So for my research project, I chose to talk about Ecuador, and specifically about media censorship and the relationship between the media and the government. So as you see, this is the face of Ecuadorian politics. His name is Rafael Correa. He's a 40-year-old economist who was a very likable figure when he first went to the elections. People liked him because he was a very humble person from very, very tough origins. And he educated himself through books in the library, and his story was just so popular amongst everyone. He won 100, his party won 100 of 137 seats in the parliament. That's how popular he was. Everyone idolized him. So naturally, Rafael Correa was drunk in his power. He's publicly expresses it in his style. I showed you an example of what his present style is, but deep down we all know that it is just a complex of feeling in power. So, now I'm going to talk about the press-government relationships and specifically about public humiliation. So as you can see here in the picture, Rafael Correa is ripping apart a very well-known newspaper called El Universo. So what does this have to do with press relations? I mean, this is a very clear example of just plain aggressiveness, plain lack of rationality. I don't know if you realize it, but newspapers are replicated in more than one copy, but that's not my business, just ripped it apart. So this is a map of the world, and what Human Rights Watch determines is the level of freedom of speech. Ecuador is right here, and like other countries in the region, it's the situation is quite questionable in terms of being able to express yourself freely without fearing prosecution. So here we have a sample of just Rafael Correa's intolerance to public opinion. In Spanish it says, vamos a ver cuando salgan del anonimato, siguen siendo tan jocosos. It means, we'll see when they come out of anonymity if they are still laughing. So just by looking at him and his finger pointing, you feel judged. And those people who freely use social media to express themselves will most likely feel threatened by his statements. Here we have a very famous political cartoon made by a very famous journalist called Javier Bonilla. And it says, to the journalists that do not idolize me or don't criticize me, I will be giving them a basic living package so that they can go to the house of profanity. So, publicly saying that in all the media outlets of the country, because he basically owns all the media outlets in the country, is very, very negative towards the public image of ourselves in the world. So, personally, I'm very ashamed of him using profanity to address journalists as fatty, insolent, incompetent, son of a... Many other terms that he's used publicly just because their opinions reflect otherwise than his opinion. This is Javier Bonilla, and I chose this quote because I think it exemplifies the spirit that all Ecuadorians should adopt. That he says, more than for my future, I fear for the liberty in general of the citizens, within which I am one more. So, now I'm going to explain a little bit why Rafael Correa is so absorbed in his campaign to obliterate voices. This picture, it was taken in 2008, and he is literally ripping apart his t-shirt because there's a squad of policemen protesting right outside what you guys have called the White House. the presidential palace. They are protesting because they have low wages. So a very simple matter suddenly turns into a dramatic exposition of frustration in Rafael Correa, and he publicly makes it an attack of terrorism. So yeah, next to that we have a political cartoon that addresses him like a king, you know, because he cannot tolerate, he's so spoiled that he cannot tolerate anyone. So how does this reflect in our journalists? So I talked about, in my paper I talked about Emilio Palacio, which is another very respected journalist. Emilio Palacio wrote an article called No a las Mentiras, which means no to lies, in which he expressed his opinion about the president's rationality. So he was sentenced by the Ecuadorian court to 12 years of jail and more than $40 million in fines, plus the court fines. So this is a very famous poster that circulated in social media. It says, if they silence Emilio Palacio, we are all in jeopardy. Those of us who want to be free, those of us who think differently, those of us who believe in democracy, those of us who reject this outrage, shout it in the streets. So this is the first example of Ecuadorian rebellion towards this oppression. That's the name of the article, No a las Mentiras, No to the Lies. And this is a photo of him being detained by the authorities. And this is a picture of a very famous judge. And ironically, he was giving a free permanent vacation to the Bahamas because he, during the case against Emilio Palacio, he allegedly prosecuted his case, which is more than 1,000 pages in a single night. So clearly that was a very clear case of corruption. But he was, what do you say, he was protected by the government. He was given free vacations. Who doesn't want free vacations? And that's Carlos Barros. Another very clear example, it's not very uncommon to get flowers, hopefully not to compliment a woman, but to receive a death sentence. So this is the case of Crudo Ecuador, a very famous satirist, who received in his vacation home a nice bouquet with a death sentence, which says, how nice to have the opportunity to say hi to you and to congratulate you on your very beautiful family. Your wife's always so beautiful. What else? I hope you enjoy your vacations, which will bring you to a moment of relaxation, which in parentheses means that your not so adequate activities will result in consequences. So, in nice words, it's a test. So now I want to show you a video about a very common video, a very famous video by a British comedian.
Remember last week we poked fun at their president, Rafael Correa, who'd been calling out his Twitter and Facebook critics by name and encouraging supporters to attack them online. Well, it turns out he saw what we did and was not thrilled. And the reason I know this is, and this is true, the president of Ecuador has been shit-talking me on Twitter all week long, saying, and this is true, among other things, he has said, these gringo talk shows are as unpleasant as a diuretic, and do British comedians exist? Are you all sure about this? He's right. British comedian is an oxymoron, much like jumbo shrimp or Ecuadorian president who prioritises his time wisely. But,
so that's a short video of what even international journalists are feeling because of his influence. So this is a very funny meme that says that I don't know who you are, I don't know what you want, but I will look for you, I will find you, and I will sue you. So this is also very characteristical of his presidency, that even though he cannot shoot individual journalist like it was 100 years ago in Ecuadorian history. He's finding legal ways to silence everyone. Which
We're at
means
10 minutes now.
just
So,
conclusion,
parting
please.
words,
Yes,
quickly,
yes.
quickly.
So, I want to make clear that this is a campaign of terror, a campaign to silence our voices. And I want to call to all of the Ecuadorians to free yourselves from these shackles and to express yourself through social media. There's content. If you see someone being abused, take a picture of it. If you see something you don't like, post it on Twitter, because that is how we bring down the image of a single man who is bringing down our country.